We say bigger is not better, better is better, because just because the numbers are there doesn't mean that value that you have to offer is being valued by that audience. You have to find the right thing.
Hey everyone, this is Jen Foster. Welcome to the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. We are really excited today to have Chloe Williamson here with us, and she is an expert at getting you booked on podcasts. So we're going to dive right in. She is actually a marketing expert too. She specializes in health and wellness, but she has a knack for crafting impactful, targeted campaigns that not only build your brand authority, but also foster meaningful connections and with your audience and understanding the industry of podcasting. So Chloe, welcome.
Hey, Jen, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in helping people with podcasts.
Well, okay, I have always been a people person, probably to an annoying point to other people. I love people. I feel like I've always understood people. And I had a very long career in for a long time. And then when COVID hit, I kind of had to pivot like almost everyone did. And I found the world of podcast interview marketing. And since then, I have become a client account manager for a lot of our clients that come through. And we build specific handcrafted marketing campaigns through podcast interview marketing. And what podcast interview marketing is, it's a little more in depth than just showing up to a podcast and sitting back and waiting for, the new clients to come to you. It's actually more in depth than that. It is a strategic and data-driven approach that encourages you to identify your target audience, identify your goals, and prioritize promotion both before and after the podcast interview has gone live. So in terms of target audience, and in terms of target audience, that's kind of the most important step. I would say it's the first step. It's the most important because especially if we are dealing with people who are novices to the world of podcasting. And I don't just mean podcast interview marketing or podcast guesting. I mean, we see people who have maybe listened to a podcast in their life. Like it still is kind of the Wild West in a lot of ways. A lot of people want to get on the biggest show possible and they think that that's all they have to do. And one, that's what everyone wants, right? And like we know that like it's not that simple. And the way that I like people to think of it is if you're speaking to a room of 10,000 people and only 9,500 of those people actually care what you have to say, then that's your target audience. It's not the 10,000 in the room, it's that 500. And I know that that's a small number in comparison, especially to 10,000, but if every one of those 500 people booked a discovery call with you, surely you would be overwhelmed. Like you're building what you need from the ground up. So identifying your target audience is ideal. And that could look like anything. That could look like your clientele. It could look like fellow listeners to things that you listen to. There are a lot of different approaches we get into to identifying that target. So that's your first step. And then identifying your goals. And I have found from experience working, especially with health and wellness practitioners and in the health and wellness space, education tends to be pretty paramount with the goals they want to educate people because I don't have to tell you, it's a massive whirlwind of information out there in the health and wellness space. Oftentimes that information is conflicting. Oftentimes it's misinformation that's out there too. So if you are having trouble breaking through all of that noise, podcast interview marketing is an effective way to join in on the conversation and join in on that conversation with the people that want to hear it.
Right. And let's dissect some of that stuff because I feel like you said a lot so far. So let's just dissect this for some of the entrepreneurs. Oh, no, you're good. And business owners out there, because I think you've said some things we really need to focus on because the first step is, okay, I want to be on podcasts. And then the second step is, okay, I'm just going to randomly pick some that I like, but that's not the right approach. So having a marketing plan around where you're going to be a guest is so ideal and so awesome because like you said, you can target that niche down to that 500 people who are your target audience and your number one, right? We say this when we do book publishing. It's like, you're not writing to 10,000 people when you write a book. You're writing to that one person, right? Exactly. And if you niche down, like how you're saying with health and wellness, like we've had some health and wellness people on our podcast before, and our podcast is for entrepreneurs and business owners. So we all need health and wellness, but there might be a better fit of a podcast they could be on where they're more of a target niche down audience, right? And so I like that you're talking about that, because a lot of times in all business, people forget about niching it down and being like, I want everyone to buy my stuff. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you got to really niche it down and have that marketing plan. And I love that you guys really focus on getting in front of the right people, because if you're just podcasting with whoever wants you to be on their show, or, or you're reaching out to just, little ones who they don't really have a big audience, it's the wrong audience, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing that. So continue on with what you're saying. So I like your number one. Let's go and keep going.
So it's exactly what you said. We say in an interview of Valet, we say bigger is not better, better is better, because just because the numbers are there doesn't mean that value that you have to offer is being valued by that audience. You have to find the right thing. And so like I said, education is typically a goal. I also think another way that podcast interview marketing differentiates from different types of marketing, say like paid ads or something like that, is that it's a conversation. So, an example I like to use is think of celebrity interviews that you've seen, and how sometimes, if it's a particularly in depth interview, you walk away feeling like you know that celebrity. And of course, parasocial delusion is a contributing factor to that. I don't think anybody is fully immune to that, but that's the exact thing we're actually trying to grasp onto with that. It's that human condition, because a conversation, more so than just simple content, provides a better opportunity to invoke an emotional response from the person listening to it. And an interview gives you a unique way to do that, because even if 10,000 other people are listening to that interview, you as the listener kind of feel like you're getting an exclusive, intimate look into this conversation between 2 or 3 people that other people aren't privy to, even if you know consciously they are. So you're getting that emotional response, and you're proving your worth to these people too, because it's also about establishing yourself as a thought leader, right? And a conversation, similarly, gives you an opportunity to do that, because you walk the walk every day in your job, you know what you're doing, but you also have to talk the talk. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive. The phrase really, it goes the other way. But if you're talking the talk, you're proving to people who maybe don't know as much about what you're doing that you know what you're talking about. And that's proving your authority. That's giving you that brand authority that other forms of marketing don't inherently provide. It's that emotional human connection.
Right. I love that. And I love it because, like you said, they get to know you, and then they feel like they know, like, and trust you, even though they've never met you, because they've just been listening to you, or they've been watching your YouTube, or depending on if it's a video podcast or not. So they've been seeing you, or they've been listening to you in their car. They're listening to all the different episodes you've been on. I know some people who they really liked an episode, and then they'll go and just find that person on all the other podcasts they've been on, right? Because they just want to know more. Like, I want to know more in depth, even though some of the interviews are similar, but not all the interviews are going to be the same, because there's different hosts that are asking the question. So I love that.
And it's a mutually beneficial thing too, because that host that's inviting you on their show is providing you the platform that you want to say what you have to say, and you're providing them an episode. So it's already very beneficial that way. You're kind of scratching each other's backs in that sense. And you're getting access to their audience. And you took the words right out of my mouth. That audience is now going to look at everything else you're doing, and then that's going to open you up to even more audiences. So it's a really organic way to kind of expand your reach, especially if you are not as privy to social media. I do find in health and wellness spaces, social media tends to be not as important to people in those spaces as they are in like more businessy side. So it's an organic way to kind of build your community, if you even want to look at it like that, through the power of your words. And it differentiates you from someone else in your industry. I don't prefer to use the word competitor. I think especially in health and wellness, there's more than enough room for everybody. And just because you're a yoga instructor and she's a yoga instructor doesn't mean that you have the same target audience. You could go to the same school, you could work in the same yoga studio. That still doesn't mean that your audience is going to be the same, because it's your unique perspective and expertise that's going to set you apart from them.
Yep. I think that's so true. I like that you mentioned, like, the same yoga teacher, the same studio has a different audience, because, we've been doing this podcast now for 10 years. And so we've been a part of a mastermind that everyone in the mastermind has a book publishing company or a marketing agency, which is what we have. And we don't feel like it's a competition because it's totally different. Like
Hmm.
we all have different audiences because we all resonate with different people.
Exactly. And there's, like I said, that's what just sets you apart as is different. It's providing that value and showing that, because it's long form content. I know that's not also a way that people look at it, but it's that long form that provides the more information. So again, you're educating, you're proving that you're the authority on it. And that's what people are going to refer back to. Because I mean, so many people watch a 45-second TikTok and then they're throwing away all their products because they heard like one unsubstantiated fact and they're running for it. But if you're providing a more in-depth thing there, that's going to be more. And then in terms of promotion, it's really great too because it's evergreen content. I don't have to tell you that. You know that better than anybody. One single impactful sentence that you say in an interview, that can turn around, that could become an entire marketing campaign. That could be your new slogan. That could be your inspiration for a pivot or a rebrand. So it just keeps coming back and an interview never goes out of style, especially, I mean, barring any major scientific breakthroughs that could debunk what you're saying, barring anything crazy like that, your words are relevant and they could be relevant for years to come. So it's not just like an ephemeral thing, like a paid ad that like eventually people are going to forget about. Like you can keep bringing that up and it's still relevant to what you're saying.
Yeah. And I love that a podcast has so many layers to it and the podcast marketing. I know a lot of people that just go on a podcast and then they're like, okay, I went on a podcast and then they're done. And they're not leveraging what's actually happened. Because you actually have so much content, right? So tell
Oh,
us
yeah.
about all the content you can create with just one interview.
Oh,
So,
I
because you
mean, if
mentioned a
you
little
just want
bit
to
of
talk,
the marketing, but the evergreen and like using one little piece, but like kind of dive into all the different layers.
you can get it simply. I mean, even just a simple image you post on your Instagram promoting that you were on this, that's already going to generate some interest. And you can do that before the interview even goes live. I would make sure it's okay with the host before you do that, just in case. But that's something you can do. Audiograms, reels, TikToks, all of the long form content can become short form content if you want to break it down. And you can use that over many different platforms. You could also transcribe it into a blog. I love blogs. I know I'm a bit of an island here, but I've been screaming at the world to bring back blogs for years to come. I want to go back. You know, it's been proven that like collectively all of our attention spans have kind of been dwindling and they're not as great, but if we're contributing to that long form content and bringing that back and like really making the correct information and the expertise paramount, I think we can turn that around. If we're the ones that are losing the attention span, we can bring it back. So that's all your content. And there's nothing that says you can't have a second interview too. If you have a particularly good interview, you can always come back. I've seen it plenty of times where a host has such a great conversation with a client that they want them to come back. And then you're just compounding more and more and more.
I love that. Yeah. And so then you have the long form content, you have the blog, you have your picture, picture. We can do a screenshot right now, right? There's,
Mm-hmm.
I could do a screenshot.
Yep.
There's so
And there's
many
our
things you
exciting.
could do. Oh, ours are closed. Let's do it again. You could do so many things with it, but then you could create the short form content with all the AI. We use Opus Clips for ours. I'm sure there's other ones. Descript
Oh, yeah.
is one we use to edit our video, and it creates reels, or we call them reels, but short video content that you can put on
Yes.
YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, all the places, LinkedIn. And so you really create a lot of content with being on a podcast. When we deliver our podcast, we usually include a couple clips as well for them to use on their social media and tag them.
Mm-hmm.
So I know other podcasters do the same. So it really is good to be interviewed on a podcast because you get so much content out of it. It's not just a one-off, right?
And I mean, you have a microphone in front of you. Everyone looks like they know what they're talking about if they have a microphone in you. And you mentioned AI, and I do want to talk about AI just a little bit. I am by no means an expert on AI, but I do have my hands on some pretty meaningful data in terms of this conversation. So people have a lot of conflicting feelings about AI, and I think there's a lot of validity to all of those feelings. It's very much still a great unknown for a lot of us. But one thing I think we can all agree on is that it's here and it doesn't really look like it's going anywhere. So, another benefit of podcast interview marketing. So, for years, a big goal of a lot of clients is SEO. I want to be ranked at the top of that Google search because that's how you build your brand authority. So, now people tend to forego Google in place of things like ChatGPT. And that's a large language model. So ChatGPT, Gemini, those little help desk chat widgets that come up on websites, that's a large language model. And we're looking at now actually language model optimization. So because ChatGPT and language models pull from existing data on the internet, sorry, I lost my page here. Because they pull from existing data on the internet and it pulls from that long form content, that's how it selects what it's going to give the user and what they're searching. So let's say a person is going on ChatGPT and they're like, I need to know more about naturopathic doctors. If you're a naturopathic doctor that has done a number of podcast interviews, you're more likely to be the one that gets answered from that language model. So it's more than just getting ranked by Google. You're now getting recommended by pretty much the whole of the internet. So it's really good. Again, that's that long form content because the conversation has more information for that large language model to pull from. And then that's the information that's going to go out. So again, building your brand authority because even this little internet thing thinks that you're great. Because think about it in terms of SEO, just because your name pops up first because of a podcast interview you did on Google, that doesn't mean that person's going to click on it. Ideally, if they're looking for it, they will. But if they're getting the information in a more bulky manner from ChatGPT, as in how it tends to give you like a bullet point list of what was talked about, you could see your question answered right then and there. And then you're like, oh, well, this doctor's talked about it. Let me check them out. So again, it's like ranked versus recommended. So whether you love or hate AI, it's here to stay. And this is a way that you could leverage what it does and how you promote yourself with it.
Yeah, I actually love AI. We've been learning a lot of different stuff. Like Perplexity is one that does exactly what you're talking about, where it will dissect and tell you like all the answers of the things you're researching, but then it gives you all the citations of where it came from. So you can see the blog, you can see the video, you can see all this stuff. So someone could be searching Perplexity and get the answer they're seeking that you gave on a podcast and then be watching your podcast or listening to your podcast right after that. So I think DeepSeek might do the same. I'm not sure, but DeepSeek I know does a bunch of stuff too that a lot of people are using that now too.
And it's versus, the C-word competitor who isn't doing podcast interview, who's like maybe only relying on paid ads, who that language model doesn't know enough about them to put them in that answer in that database. So it's utilizing what's happening. It's future proof, as we like to call it. Because again, I don't think AI is going anywhere.
Right. I agree. Well, I love this. I love that we're talking to all business owners that you really need to be on podcasts if you want to be seen. It's really a podcast marketing tool. It's not just, hey, I'm going to be on podcast, but it's a marketing plan. So we love Interview Valet. I know you said you've been working there for a while now, but when you have a podcast, when you get a podcast booker, I call them, or someone who can help you get on the right places, it's way different than just saying, I'm going to be on podcasts and choosing one or two out of the top of Apple, right? And half the time, top of Apple podcasts you can't get on anyway. They're too big, so they have too much of an audience.
A lot of money,
and they charge a lot. Yeah, even us, like we are booking, I think July right now, so it's 4 months out or something like that. So we get booked with the people who want to be on our show. And, it is hard to kind of get on podcasts. So having someone like Interview Valet to help you get booked is really great. I know there's some free online platforms out there that we've recommended in the past to people that send you emails of all these like podcasts you could be on, but you really, honestly, it doesn't work. So you really need someone to help you. So I'm glad, Chloe, that you're helping all these people get found. Tell us one last thing that entrepreneurs and business owners can do to really, leverage this and to get booked on podcasts.
Do your research. I know nobody loves research, but do your research. And your research, like I mentioned earlier, can be really simple. What does your own clientele look like? Who do you serve? And kind of go from there. So if you mostly serve middle-aged women, what are middle-aged women listening to? Who are they idolizing? Who are they listening to? And it's kind of like reverse engineering. Like sometimes you kind of got to dig deep into what's already in front of you to really get like the bigger answer. And that's part of it. You could also, there are plenty of databases out there that can break down audience demographics for you. So if it's a show you want to get on, maybe see what kind of audience is listening to it. and then reverse engineer that. Okay, well, if this audience is listening to this, what else are they listening to? And how can I get on that? So it's a lot of back end work. You got to do the research. You got to know where you're talking about. And also, what do you listen to? Like, just because you listen to the show doesn't mean it's the right fit for you, but maybe it is. If the kind of demographics align and if you think there's value to be added there, that's one way to do it. And if all of that is too much work for you, then of course you can come to an agency like Interview Valet. But there is a lot of groundwork you can do on your own to kind of determine where your space is supposed to be.
Yeah. And I love that, to be honest, since we've been using Interview Valet to get people booked on our podcast, like we met, I think, in PodFest a couple of years ago. You can look at our podcast episodes over the last 2 years compared to the last 8 years before that on the quality of guests. So that's the other thing is you're going to be booked on quality podcasts, and then that podcast is going to have quality guests. So even if you're a podcaster and you're listening to this, partner with some really awesome podcast bookers because you'll get the best guests. So I was just wanted to put that plug out there too.
I appreciate that. And it's strategic, it's data driven. We move with the times. It used to be downloads were the metric that podcast popularity was measured on. It's not like that anymore. It's actually a lot more abstract, and it's like global ranking. And it seems like it changes from year to year, but we're always at the forefront of that. And we use that data to make our decisions and vet exactly where the audience is and where you need to be. And I mean, it's all done with a person too. So we like that too. It's the personal touch that makes the difference here. You can tell me exactly what you like and what you don't like, and I can make sure to go in and, prioritize what the actual goal is.
Yes, I love that. Well, tell people where they can go to get more information and to find you.
Okay, if you want to find out more about me specifically, you can find me on LinkedIn, Chloe Williamson. I'll be one of the first ones. It's not that common of a name. And you could also check out interviewvalet.com/Chloe for my own personal landing page if you want to find out more. That's also navigable through our own website, Interview Valet. You are welcome. We have a ton of free resources online. Even if you're not exactly ready to book a discovery call yet, go navigate our website. There's a lot of good, solid, data-driven information on there that we keep up to date as the months go by, and you can learn a lot. And then if you're still inspired, by all means, book a discovery call, and maybe you can work with me.
I love that. Thanks, Chloe, for being on the show. You can also find Interview Valet on our partners page on eliteonlinepublishing.com. But thanks for listening to Elite Expert Insider. Make sure that you subscribe and like this episode, as well as share this episode with someone who it would benefit. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full-spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.